Hey guys, welcome back to Power Up Gamers. I'm Driven D&D, and tonight's video is going to be about building a story arc or a plot line. With me, I have a special guest, Mikethepiper. Say hello, Mike.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining in. Yeah, my name is Mike. My channel is called Mike the Piper. You can follow it on YouTube. I also play Edric Meadows in a little game called The Provokers, which is run phenomenally by the amazing Matt Click of A Fistful of Dice. So I'm very happy to be here and very excited to talk about this topic. So why don't you, please.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy you playing in The Provokers. In fact, I just got rewatching Bronze Eyes with your duel or against Kenrick. It's pretty awesome. And The Provokers as a whole is interesting to me because they have this ongoing story arc. In the first one, it was dealing with the corruptor, and this one, it seems to be dealing with the Gazan alts and the dredges. This Kema, I think his name is the one you do. But it was interesting to me how they dragged out the story arc over so many sessions. And
yes, I agree. I mean, it's definitely it's a nice slow burn, and I've found myself that when I'm making a campaign or playing in a game, or running one, I should say, I really do like that slow application of story. You know, nothing. I don't really like to force too much knowledge or force anything on players, and kind of like railroad them in one spot. I like giving my players the feeling of freedom to be able to go and do whatever they like to do, and making a story in that regard, I find, is crucial, because to have that sense of freedom, that sense of player agency, is really important when running any type of tabletop role-playing game.
One of my DMs used to call it the illusion of choice. And it's kind of weird because we would make our own decisions, but because he knew us as players and had gamed with us, he pretty much could tell what choices we would make. So he actually prepped ahead for those particular choices, but if we did something crazy, he improvised with it.
Definitely. And it's funny because for me, the way I like, because I'm a very prep heavy game master. I like to prep, but I have noticed too that I have moved away, thankfully, from kind of a railroad aspect into more of, I focus now when I do my heavy prep, that I will take the bad guy or the main antagonist of the story, and I will just simply say, okay, what is his plans? What would be his plans if the players never interjected? What would be his plans now that the players have interjected? And what is he deciding to do? So I would prep in that regard. So I would make for a more engaging antagonist. And then how would those ripples from those actions affect the NPCs? So I mean, generally, like in a small town or a village, a lot of times you'll see that news travels faster than any wizard spell. Rumors and news. It's word of mouth. It's very, very fast, and people pick up on that. So when something interesting happens, people automatically flock and want to know more. So I think that is a really important thing, that player actions also dictate the direction of the story, which
Oh,
is,
definitely.
oh, yeah. And I feel that, like, if you have a scenario where the something happens, the players do something interesting or heroic or whatnot have you, that affects everyone in town, and then that will move the story in a direction that you're probably going to have to improv at some point. But on a plus note, it also gives you the opportunity to prep heavier than with the kind of with the antagonists and what their forces are planning on doing.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I found player choices can lead to some very interesting story arcs just based on what they do. For example, oh, I remember this to this day, and it's actually where I got the gimmick that I use of a possessed teddy bear that's possessed by a little ghost girl. Now, all she wants is for her and her family to be buried properly. But we had this rogue in the party the first time I used it. Real shellfish character. Never did nothing for anyone. But he was the one to go down in the well to retrieve this body of this girl. And he was the rest of the party was wanted to kill this possessed teddy bear. And he's like, no, we're going to help it. And it became such an interesting story after they buried the girl. She became a guardian spirit for a while, and he would carry the teddy bear with him for like the rest of his adventures.
See, and that's pretty amazing. Yeah, because that really brings together like a really fascinating, like an anecdote that no other party played in no other game would generally have.
They all want to kill the possessed teddy bear.
Exactly. And I mean, you look at like other such huge very popular games. For example, the Provokers. Not many people have a pitched on fight, a pitched on melee battle in an elevator that's quickly like falling to its doom. Exactly. Nor would you have a massive floating battlefield of stones where people are fighting a god. It's really amazing, like that. Like anecdotes like that can create wonderful memories and really bring your players together. Oh, and yeah. the one thing I find like fascinating, especially when it comes to story arcs, is that a lot of people think of, well, how do I write a story arc? How do I make this grand epic? And to that I say, you're not really going to make the epic. Your players are going to make the epic. However, there are different ways that you can create a storyline when you're not in control of the protagonists, because that's 4 to 6 of your close personal friends who are the protagonists. You are the antagonists and everyone else along the way. So there are two different types of like main types of kind of story arcs. You have your 6 standard kind of like writing story archetypes. So you have your rags to riches, and the opposite. You have like a man in the hole, which is like a fall and then a rise. You have the Icarus, which is the opposite. You have some rising up and then falling, and then of course you have the two of the of much more complex storylines, things like the Cinderella storyline, where you have a rise and then a fall and then a rise again, or the Oedipus story archetype, which is the fall, rise, and then fall. It's things like that is something that you can employ, I feel, into a D&D game, or any type of tabletop role-playing game. But you have to understand that although you obviously cannot tell the players where to go, because that doesn't make it really very fun, you can use outside influences to make that these type of archetypes, these type of story archetypes, a reality. Well, reality insofar as Dungeons and Dragons, of course, but you can have something where, for example, you can have four, let's say, four, down on your luck mercenaries who just so happen to luckily get a single job of someone, just watching a caravan or watching a merchant's wagon as they go to, some small town to deliver goods. It doesn't pay well, but they're all desperate. They have no more money. Either they drank it all away or they just down on their luck, and they just managed to luckily get, this job. So, I mean, you have something like that, where it would be, that could be the beginning of a rags to riches, or
I actually did that, and it was a rags to riches type. And one of the things they didn't know was one of the ladies is in the caravan and was as a concubine for the sultan in the town they were going to. But she was undercover. She had gone to visit family and didn't want people knowing who she was.
Which, of course, I mean, is understandable. Someone could kidnap said individual, which would start its own, story arc.
And the caravan had been attacked by bandits. These guards, lowly adventurers down on the luck, happened to save her. And she introduced them to the sultan, who then gave them a job. And they became big names. Ended up falling out of favor with him later on, but
which, I mean, and that happens, right? You can look, you see, that could be more of a Cinderella story where you have a rise, and they are seen in the sultan's eyes. He's happy, but then they have a fall. Maybe there's there was a jealous vizier who was trying to take out said sultan and wanted to discredit the players as just a distraction from his actual plans of.
In my particular case, it was a neighboring kingdom's ambassador who had fallen in love with the sultan's wife, and the players had chose to help them arrange the secret rendezvous, and the sultan found out.
Yeah, that's never a good thing.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. But it ended up well, because they escaped with the sultan's wife to the neighboring kingdom, and
always there you go. There's a happy ending. That's definitely a happy ending.
A happy ending for the little campaign, but it was definitely interesting in the story arcs that I made using what little I know of writing, and have been some of the best campaigns I've played at NDM.
Well, another way that I find can also help is creating the campaign in acts. So this sometimes requires a finite type of campaign, a campaign where you know exactly how many sessions you're going to play and when it's going to end. So if you say, hey, I want to make a campaign, it's going to be, X amount of sessions long. Let's say it'll be 30 sessions long. It'll be a fairly epic campaign. And of course you say to yourself, okay, so the first 10 sessions will be the first act. This is what what you're going to be doing is you're going to be let's say setting up, introducing the NPCs, introducing the players to the current political climate or the current like the problems that are kind of associated with this world or this region or even this town. Maybe this town is just one bad luck town that everyone should have moved away from, but they didn't.
Sounds like where I live.
There you go. Maybe it's the Sunnydale of medieval cities, and is just sitting on a hellmouth, just waiting. But and in let's say in sessions 11 through 20, you say to yourself, okay, so in these sessions, it's going to be the actual meat and potatoes of the campaign. So people are going to be doing quests, or they're going to be doing jobs, or they're going to be doing everything to try and either find out what's going on or curry favor or do whatever they have to do. And that's your kind of like your main course. And then in Act 3, that's when you have your climax. That is you're building up to everything. And in something like that, you want to bring in all the NPCs that they came into contact with. It's a big reunion show. Everyone's in there. Everyone's kind of working together. The NPCs are working with the players to bring down this larger than life antagonist, this monster, and then it all like by the end of it, you have, and I think one bit of advice too to impart onto the audience would be have the final fight, like the final big massive fight, one session before the end. So if you want to do it in session 30 is the end, have your big fight in session 29, and then that way you're able to let the players kind of wrap things up. What happens to your character? Where do they go? They've been through something that by all accounts no one should be able to walk away from with a clear head.
I definitely recommend doing the same, and not so much in resolving the fight the episode before, but at least starting it and leaving maybe that session on a cliffhanger in middle of the fight. And then next session,
yes,
you pick it up and let your players do the little epilogues.
In the realm of cliffhangers, one of the most important things you can possibly do see what I did there? That's the cliffhanger, right? So it's you want to leave them wanting more. You want to leave them at a moment, are they going to rescue the town or the city? Are they going to help the king? Will they save the king or will he die? And what will happen? Will there be a huge power vacuum? It's
exactly. Will they slay the dragon that just breathed fire down upon them?
Exactly. So I mean, like these things are big. They are their cliffhangers are a great way to really invest your players into it. Same with, and again, this is another huge thing. Get your players' backstories and weave them into the story.
Oh,
and also, like a lot of DMs get kind of not choked, because I shouldn't say choked. Maybe they get a little bit overwhelmed or even flustered. No, flustered is the best word. When the players don't take the bait, they don't take the here's the plot hook. Here, it's right here. Here, I'm coating it in chocolate. I'm sending it to you. Sometimes they'll go off on a side quest. But the thing is, you want to take that side quest and wrap it, just hook it in at the end to kind of bring it back into your main story. So I mean, let's say for example, these players, going back to that example I said before, the players get to this small town. The merchant thanks them. They go off and, they see, they decide, of course, to go into said ubiquitous tavern, the great tavern that's in every single town everywhere, sitting down for a drink, like they see the townsfolk, seem kind of concerned and everything, speaking around. They find out that there's been sightings of some strange demon, some strange winged creature, that's been hanging around, lurking around at night, and just scaring people. One farmer said that he lost some cows, and if someone could help him find them, he'd be happy to have them, happy to pay them. And if they decide, okay, well, missing cows, demon. Nah, let's go for the missing cows. And if they go for the missing cows, you find out that there's a fresh hole in the farmer's field, and it leads to an Ankeg's lair. They kill, a pitched battle ensues. They kill the Ankeg, but it turns out there's a desiccated corpse, someone wearing brown, brown cloak and everything else, and they have a strange symbol. It looks demonic or infernal or something, and then it kind of brings them back in.
Exactly.
Now you don't have to have the, no matter which way you go, all roads lead to the castle that I want you to get to. It doesn't have to necessarily be like that. You can, if they decide to go left into the forest instead of right towards the tower, maybe there's something in the forest that could be there, just waiting for for the players to come upon it, right? And if it never,
a good example of this was in one particular campaign, and I ran. They needed to consult a gypsy fortune teller in order to figure out where to go to retrieve the pieces of the sword they were after. They found out that the gypsy had passed through another town recently and set off with the intention of going to that town, but on the way they decided to veer off into these woods. Well, I ended up having the gypsy put in the woods. It's because it makes sense. She travels from town to towns. So they just, instead of having them do the encounter in town, they did it around a campfire.
That makes a lot of sense. Like, I would say that if you want, let's say, your players to excuse me, if you want your players to kind of figure out clues and figure out something like that, like a mystery or something, like don't have just one area of clues. Have several different clues in several different areas, and maybe your players will only need the one to piece it all together, or perhaps they'll need several. So
exactly, that was just the first clue out of like 7 clues. And each clue kind of led to another, kind of like a treasure hunt.
Well, and precisely, and that's exactly the way that I would probably do it. I ran a murder mystery one shot, and I'll be the first to admit that I did. I made some errors. Of course, I'm a new GM, but one thing I liked was that I made sure that there were enough clues around that you let the players, like, just gave them enough to let the players figure it out. And once the players start figuring it out, it's like, wow, you know what? This is awesome, because there's nothing more satisfying than, as a person, when you solve a puzzle. You solve a puzzle on your own, and you feel good. and it kind of gives your players that feeling like, yeah, man, we can do this, you know, and it gives them the confidence, which, I mean, depending on how lethal your game is, and we're not going to get into that, but depending on the lethality of your game, I mean, you know, that could be a boon or detrimental to the success of the campaign.
One of the things I did to ensure they found all the clues was I made multiple locations for each of the clues. And there were different objects in each of those locations. It's like one, for example, there was an old rice woman medicine and type who knew of an ancient tale. If they had visited the library in town, they would have found an old dusty book that had the tale in it. And if they went into the temple had an old stone tablet with the tale on it. So, even though I gave them choices on where to go, it didn't matter which one they picked because they still got the same clue.
That makes total sense. I like doing something similar to that in a way. Like my preference is, you know, I'll think of, okay, you know, they need to find out what is going on, who is doing it, and what
and why,
and why, yeah, why, or what, you know, what the motivations of this character are, what the motivations of this antagonist is. So what I would do, I mean, you know, and this is just me, like, let's say, you know, dive back into the example. So let's say they do go and defeat the Songkeg. They find this cultist-like individual who, I mean, you know, with the robes and the holy symbol or some sort of a symbol. Gesundheit. So when they find this individual, they say, okay, whoa, there's a cult here. Oh my gosh, what is going on? You know, and then the first thing they would probably want to do is, hey, let's take this to the authorities, as you would, because a lot of people don't just go wandering around a town saying, are you a cultist? Are you a cultist? Because people would probably start to go, okay, I don't know who you are, but you need to get out of here because I'm not having any of this. So, of course, they would want to, you know, find some alderman or mayor or captain of a guard or even a leader of a local militia, you know, whoever it is, you know, and that person would say, well, geez, you know, I didn't know there was a cult here. Demons? I mean, we heard stories, but we figured it was just, you know, like villagers. Like, I don't understand, you know, so, you know, so they said, well, you know, so this individual is like, okay, well, I mean, I know that, you know, there was this old ruined tower and a lot of people don't like going to it. It makes them really creeped out and they don't, you know, they're scared of it and stuff. You know, maybe there's something there, you know, and of course, there you go. There's your bog standard, go to the tower, find out what's in there, you know, and perhaps maybe there's some goblins in there or perhaps even it's completely empty. But maybe there's an imp or a quasit in there, you know, some creature that can turn invisible and just harangue and harass the players on their way all the way up to the top of this tower, which could be, you know, maybe an old wizard's tower or something, hasn't been used in, you know, 20, 30, 40 years. You know, once they figure out what's going on and maybe, you know, you give them a couple of things, you know, maybe you see some old ritual, maybe an old circle, you know, if you have any players, and this is where the great way to put into, like put forth your any like magic users in the party. So you have a wizard, you know, it's like, well, you know, you can see some summoning, looks to be like some type of summoning magic, you know, and there's like infernal symbols drawn in chalk and blood all over the ground. Oh my gosh. So there's like, okay, well, we definitely have a demon. So there's your, one clue. They take it back to the quest giver. Wow, geez, a demon. Oh man, I can't believe this. Well, maybe you have to start, talking to, maybe talk to people around town, find out what they know, or find out where they saw the demon go or something. So now there's your social aspect of things, where you start, having them interact with the people, and then they start finding out clues there. Well, I thought the demon went that way, and I could have sworn the demon went that way, but it might have been a raven. I don't know. The more people begin to like kind of pick up on things, the more you're giving them more to, it's like, well, geez, where should we go now? Well, I sometimes we've seen strange lights in the forest, but I don't know, maybe, and maybe they go out into the forest and maybe they just fight like just some random creature who really puts the hurt on them. If you like more lethality in your games, just go wandering blindly into the forest at night, and suddenly, oh, there's a chimera and you guys are level 2. So you guys pick, you decide what you want to do, and doing whatever you got to do. Now the players are hurt and wounded. And I mean, again, now we're looking into Act 2 at this point, because, they've gone and they've done all the meeting of the different people and everything else. And now, you're into the meat of it. Okay, well, we know of, a wizard in the next town who has some information based on, who has information about summoning. Maybe go talk to him. He's kind of an odd duck, so they have to go and travel. And you have, maybe, like wandering orcs or a Tarask. I don't know. I mean, you could be as much of a jerk as you want to. I don't know. Big giant kaiju monsters just walking around, and they go talk to this guy, come back, and then more stuff happens. So
yeah. One of the things I would have done there is I would have made it be the wizard that had lived in the ruined tower. And I would have made him actually a ghost that they had to deal with. It's to get the information and on the summoning.
Definitely.
So they have to go into this other town to find this wizard. They find out they got to go back to the ruined tower. And that explains why some of the books were flying off the shelves, falling.
Yeah, exactly.
We did have footsteps and no one would be there.
Yeah. And I mean, and, that being said, and then at the point where they're starting to talk to more and more townsfolk, maybe more of them, like they'll begin to talk to more of them. And then this quest giver of theirs, the mayor or the captain of the guard or whoever, he starts just sending them away on really weird random stuff, and making them like, okay, what is this individual doing? Like, why are we getting sent to all these places? It makes no sense, and get the players' suspicions up, and sure enough, it turns out that, like the main quest giver, this mayor, is the demon. This mayor is a Cambion, which to me is one of the most versatile enemies you can have. It's an amazing underutilized creature in the monster manual, and I highly suggest if you want a good creature that is great for low level and mid level and even high level, if you have a swarm of them, they're phenomenal creatures. Really, really suggest using like multiple, like Cambions are just great, and their lore is pretty cool. They're a type of creature that's just all about power and dominating people and pushing them down, and it's great that way. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I often and have like the NPCs end up being either the big bad guy without the players knowing it, or like a head, or like a lead henchman kind of thing. Like maybe he's the leader of the cult, but he's in service to this demon. And that would explain why he's sending them on all these other missions, because he doesn't want them finding out about the demon. And that could even be how he rose to his station within the town too. So there's a lot of angles on stories that you can go into on just a few details.
Definitely agree with you on that one. I mean, you know, a great thing to do is think of the way a magician kind of does their thing, right? It's all misdirection.
Yeah.
You know, they're pointing you out to here, and you can do this in a literary sense, or at least in a gaming sense, by utilizing red herrings or just sending them off in an unhelpful direction. You know, you can do it by just bogging the players down. You know, there's like it's a great way to do it, to not necessarily to prolong the story, but you want to kind of bring them into a low point, especially if it's hard for them to fight. You know, if they're constantly warring and fighting and it's just bringing them down, you know, it's tiring. And you know, they'll try and keep it up and keep fighting and stuff, but you know, sending them off in different stuff and getting them confused. Confusion for players is great for me, because a lot of times I find that they're more invested in trying to figure out just what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
And that is huge.
So we've been talking for a while now. I definitely love doing the aspect of a story arc. I use it in campaigns and multiple one-shots, odds, and try-shots all the time, mini campaigns. And that's for me, that's the type of building a story arc I'm most familiar with. So that's kind of what I personally would recommend, just because it's pretty simple, easy. You have the intro, which is pretty much your act one. You're introducing the characters, the motivations, the backstories, NPCs, locations, and what the objective is. Then you have your little intermission, which is usually given a break on a one shot. Then you come back. Act two is kind of the meat and potatoes. They're figuring things out. They're starting to resolve it, and then towards the end of Act two, you kind of transfer into the conclusion and epilogue. So that's where I personally recommend building a story arc.
Yes, I could not agree with you more. The act method is fantastic. It makes everything very efficient, makes everything like really cut and dry. It's a great system. It's a great idea. The story arcs, the story archetypes that I mentioned before, that's kind of a good way to establish a theme for your campaign. So, for example, I'm just gonna kind of look at some notes here. So, for example, let's say the man in a hole, which is a fall and then a rise. So, you know, it could be something in the effect of, okay, you know, you guys are like elite guards or elite protectors of the king, and this king was found murdered on your watch, and you were exiled from this place. Now, none of you killed him, but clearly, you guys need to, like, you got to find out why, or are you going to start a new life, or are you going to demand justice? And if they decide to start a new life, something like that, it'd be like, okay, well, there's bounty hunters after you now, and while you guys are doing what you're doing, yet this guy here is, okay, are you so and so and so and so? Okay, out comes the sword, and it's like, I'm here to put you down because you failed in your task to protect the king. And of course, this, killing a king now, that's a regicide is, can be a huge problem, especially in a feudal society. You have a massive power vacuum left. You've got tons of people who now are rushing to that throne, and who knows what could happen. Maybe they had to escape. The players had to escape with the only heir to the throne, like whether it's a young boy or a young girl, and while he or she is the proper heir to the throne, they have to protect her. And it's like, okay, great, you have people after you, but you got to build a case and prove that this is, the young princess or the young prince, who is destined to be king or queen. So, that's a fall, but then it goes up into a rise because because the players are going to be fighting and, making small victories and small increments. Now, that's not to say that they won't fall again. There won't be a moment where it's like, well, maybe, the young heir is kidnapped and they could be killed. So the players have to go and rescue them. There's a plethora of different things that can happen. And, that's what it is. It's this great big wave, it's like triumphs and despairs and triumphs and despairs. And until finally it just builds. So towards the end, you've got this massive climax, maybe, a huge fight on the very top of the top battlements of this massive palace, this huge castle, where you're fighting some of the elite guard and magic users and who knows what else. You have this pitched great battle, and it ends with either success or failure. I mean, depending on no one likes their campaign to end in failure, but it does happen. So I mean, and that's okay. A TPK is not a bad thing. It's not the best thing, but it's not a bad thing.
No, that's one thing I love about our D&D and other tabletop RPGs is the story doesn't end, even if the characters are removed. The world keeps spinning in NPCs and locations, and this great world's still gonna happen. And even if the party dies, and you can pick up the same storyline 20, 30 years later, dealing with the results of what happened because the first party failed.
Yeah, exactly. And that is key right there. I think that is huge.
A good example of kind of a continuing storyline is even in the Provokers. In season 2, you have Holly. Eva, as Dice's daughter that we saw in the first campaign as a child.
Definitely. Oh yeah, and I think that's great. And Barker does such a phenomenal job. But another thing, like another one though, one that I'm doing is in my campaign, The Foundation, which is an empire building campaign. I have expressly made it clear to my players that when like your players will get old and your players will die, but if you decide to have a son or a daughter or a child, then your child will grow, and you can teach them as you would teach them, so they can become like whatever class you want. So, just to make it like a generational type of game.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I've done that before too, where people play their descendants.
Yeah, and I think that's just rad. Like I love the idea of that, because it gives players, like, especially if they're going to play in a long term campaign, gives them the opportunity to say, okay, you know what, I'm good. My character's died. Okay, well, your son or daughter is now 19 or 20, and make a class. What have you taught them how to do, kind of thing.
Yeah. Ebergon, for example, or an elf mystic I played back in 2nd edition before we even truly had the mystic class, as he was the 7th character out of a bloodline I had played. And one of the things the DM had us do was as out of our parents, we could pick one feature. So if they had a particular class, we could pick the same class. If they had a special feat they had learned, we could pick that. And we could pick one from each parent. And then we started with those on top of the racial abilities and the normal stuff. And that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I like that idea, and it's also interesting that 2 of the players are playing elves, and 3 of the players are playing humans. So it's going to be interesting to have the elven players, providing they don't die, to outlive the other players, to outlive them. And so what's going to happen there?
Definitely.
So it'll be very interesting. It'll be very interesting, and we'll see what each one of them decides to do at some point in time.
Exactly. Well, we've gone for quite a bit, so let's go ahead and do kind of an example story arc, and we'll call it good.
Sure thing. You want to begin?
Let's see. Nah, I think I'll let you begin it off.
Sure thing. All right. Okay. So
I would do it kind of as like we're coming up with this idea for a campaign story arc. I'd say 10, maybe 12 sessions. And that seems to be a kind of reasonable for most groups and players. And just kind of approach it the same way you would as, oh, okay, this idea popped into my head for a campaign.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Well, I'll say that the players were part of a small military contingent that is currently fighting a war. 2 kingdoms fighting for reasons that the players don't know. And their unit, at first they were winning the war, and their unit had pushed so far ahead that all of a sudden they had become trapped way behind enemy lines. And they now have to either find their way back, or they have to at least try and do what they can to help win this war, to help push the their army further ahead.
Okay. I'll build on that a little bit before we kind of go into the next part. I'm gonna say one is army is pretty much this entire continent and that the players are on, and the opposing army is from an underwater kingdom. So they constantly have to defend their shores. And when they get behind enemy lines, it's because they've gone out on these warships. It's trying to find the enemy's kingdom, and they get stranded either through like some kind of storm, like a hurricane type thing that wrecks the ship. It gets stranded basically on islands, and then they have to decide whether they make their home on the island, continue to look for the enemy and how, or find a way back.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. And perhaps in the, like, before we get to like the main part of the of the campaign, in the beginning part of the campaign, they learn that this sea kingdom, this underwater people, let's say Sahuagins or not really merfolk.
Merfolk. Dragons, sea elves, whatever you want to use.
Yeah, so there's this underwater kingdom is using an island to make, like, to have this enchantment where they can they can go on land, they can breathe air. Perhaps it can only be limited, but now maybe this kingdom was banished centuries ago to the sea, as they were like an evil kind of a kingdom, but they were cursed by either a powerful wizard or a god. I'm thinking more of God. And then now they're finally finding a way to undo that curse, that magic. And it's based on one island in this massive cluster. And there's just hundreds and hundreds of islands, and the players have to try and find it before time runs out. And so now they're going from island to island, and they're finding all these different, like, weird things, like people don't normally go to these islands, but they find all these weird, like, cultures and like creatures that live there, and perhaps even like artifacts from the past. Maybe used to be part of a great peninsula that was actually the kingdom of this underwater group.
And building on that, I think when they do find the right island, and this is like right before the meat and potatoes of the session begins, and they find this ruined temple with signs of this blood ritual kind of thing going on. Obvious sacrifices have been made, and it turns out that the Sea Kingdom has made a deal with a demon to undo this curse, and they have to stop that. And during this time, I'm the coldest of this underground or undersea kingdom that are serving this demon attack them and kidnap them, and take them undersea, and like the whole meat and potato is they're now undersea. They gotta figure out how they're gonna keep breathing, and if they escape from the captors.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, yeah, this is, and then now they have all this information, they have to go back. They have to now fight their way back to their army or back to their home continent. With the whole combined demon underwater kingdom at their heels, nipping at their heels as they're like trying to go back.
And I would say there's a timeline. Like maybe they find out within the next full moon, or, the demon's gonna be manifested in this world.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, they've got like 1 month, 1 month to get back, and maybe they'll have time, maybe they won't. I mean, it depends. So I mean, because they'll still have to stop for food and
exactly. So I would say the real meat eating potatoes is they figure out how to escape, figure out how to breathe to get back up to the surface, and back to their army, all while being hunted, and then after they make it back, they report in. They put in charge of the attack act to prevent this because they have the most information, or they form this elite unit to go in and deal with it.
Well, definitely, and I mean, yeah, that which would make the most logical sense. And I mean, as long as, as long as now, of course, this all depends on the different player options, right? I mean, now of course you can't do maps and story arcs for every single island, but I mean, do like now something like that. I'd probably do like about 8 or 9 islands before they would find the actual like the island. Give the players a chance to go out and explore. This is something. So you have exploration. Maybe they want to even talk to, get some help from some creatures on different islands and see what you can.
And do. I would even make it a point of that on the way back while they're being hunted.
Yeah, definitely.
Allow them to do some of that. Maybe make some allies to help in the upcoming fight.
Exactly. And then it would make things kind of like a bit more open, just to give them kind of an option, right? They don't have to be fighting all the time, and not every player wants to just constantly fight. Sometimes they just want to role play it out.
And I would say, okay, so now we're building towards the conclusion. And it's elite unit. They've made some deals with tribes on different islands and to help in this fight. They gotten soldiers from their kingdom. They've made this battle plan, and they're on their way to fulfill it. Now, I personally would have something like a squad or a patrol of the Sea Kingdom in a minor battle with them, but have like one of the head guys on the Sea Kingdom side is in that boat. And they capture them, they can kill them, they can interrogate them for information.
Oh, definitely. And I think it's good to have a hierarchy of like, enemy combatants to fight against, because you want to be able to, you don't want to just fight minions and then the big bad guy. I mean, having different types of enemies and fighting and everything else. it's definitely something that, most players like. They like, if they're going to have a fight, it's going to be a good fight, and a lot of players like winning. If they just win by the skin of their teeth, that's pretty awesome, and it makes you feel good as a player too.
Exactly. So, let's say they've interrogated this lieutenant. They found out that the summoning ritual is going to take place in a sunken temple under the ocean. And never they were captured before, so they kind of know the area. But then they got to find this temple or fight their way through basically the entire opposing army, get it to the big bad guy, which is, in this case, they're going to arrive too late to stop the demon from manifesting. So I picture then the epic fight being this fight with the demon, and to banish them back or destroy them totally.
Or possibly even join them. I mean, players are going to do what players are going to do. And I mean, like something like this, like planning out the different sessions, in a finite way is good. And then, like a lot of times players are going to change all that. So it's always good to adapt to how the different sessions, play out.
That's definitely one thing they could get there. They might be battered, bruised from having fought, and decide we're going to change sides.
Yeah, it's entirely. I mean, it depends, right? I mean,
allow them. Yeah. And then you pitch the battle of, okay, they joined the sides. Now they have to kind of dispose of their own former teammates.
Maybe. I mean, who knows? But yeah, that's definitely a plan.
Right. So I think we showed a pretty good example of how to build a story arc. We came up with a pretty interesting concept, right? That I would love to see someone run that. I definitely would want to be a player.
Well, there you go. It's entirely possible. So any of you folks at home, you already have a player right here.
Exactly. I love the idea. And it's something I kind of been working on one of my ideas that I'm kind of rolling around is working on some adventure kits similar to Oath of the Frozen King. And one of the big things I want to do there is an underwater adventure, because that's so seldomly done in game sessions that it's still unique and interesting to me. So we had a pretty good time. We gave a good example, good chat.
I think so. Yeah, I think we had a great talk, and I really enjoyed it, and I learned a bunch. I mean, I like, it gives me a good idea to apply this to my own campaigns, and I thank you for that, because I think that's great.
It's totally awesome. I love doing stuff like this. And one of the things I'm planning on doing, with my health permitting, is when I actually release these near Thanksgiving, I'm planning on running a game each night based on what the topic is.
Oh, that's great. I think that's a great idea.
Now, that is health permitting, of course.
Of course. Yeah.
Those who know me know my health hasn't been the best lately. So that part may not happen, but that the concept was kind of this workshop, because as I saw so many times the same questions being asked, as as like this whole topic is kind of one of the questions that comes up again and again. How do I have a plot line? How do I develop a story arc? When do I end a story arc?
Makes sense.
Arcs. So this is kind of way to answer them, and to give new DMs a bit of information that they can work with. So
I agree. And I had a great conversation with you. I'm very glad to have done it. And thank you so much for asking me to come on today.
oh, it's totally been my pleasure. I always enjoy hanging out. So it was about time we did a lab on the video.
I agree. And thank you for having me.
No, but I would find that what we've said useful. Feel free to leave comments, and we'll respond to them as soon as we possibly can. And so until next time, may the dice always roll in your favor.